Welcome back to Chart Wizard Trading. Been a while since I made an S&P 500 video, but I feel that it's time to make another one. These things take time. As you all know, I've been warning about a top for quite a bit now, but 100-year cycles take a while to finally top out. And if you look at it in this perspective, this is a monthly chart of the S&P 500. Okay. Basically, the point at which I started talking about a top was, I'll give it a fairness here, right around here. Okay. Right around there is where I started talking about a top. So in the big scheme of things, right, we're still in that wave. You just need to find where the end of it is. And we have some new evidence that shows that that is where the end of it is. Okay, and we're going to deep dive into that. But to know where you are, you need to know where you came from. Okay, and this is since 1932. Okay, a 5-wave count with an extended third wave. A very, very typical impulse wave. Okay, you have a zigzag here in the second wave, and you alternate in the fourth wave in the form of an expanded flat. Okay, and then you have, this is your final fifth, your blow off top, if you will. All right, so let's, I'm going to zoom in here to just this final fifth wave, and let's take a look to see what that looks like. Okay, this is zoomed in here to just the final fifth wave, and a very similar pattern as the larger one. As you can see, we have a 5-wave impulse with an extended third wave. It's completely normal. That's what most impulses look like. That do they have to? No. Okay, you can have any one of these waves can extend. In fact, up to 2 of them can, but it's very typical for the third wave to be your extended wave. Some things this count has going for it. So in here, you have alternation between your second and your fourth. However, in the orange impulse, or the bigger one, this one is a zigzag, and that's a zigzag combination. So while it does alternate in pattern, it's not necessarily meeting the definition of alternation. Okay, which leaves open interpretation, of course, but it's not a rule. Okay, it's a guideline. And as I go forward with this and dig in deeper to the smaller counts, you'll see that most of the time, each one of these impulses are alternating in corrections, which is what a guideline is. A guideline means it happens most of the time. It's not a rule. If it were a rule, it would happen every time. Okay? Alternation is not, it's not a rule. It's a guideline. Expect it most of the time. Okay? But as you can see, it's very nice. Pattern that's played out there. We can look at some other guidelines here. So let's check this out. We have, let's measure the first wave. Okay. And press it to the fifth wave. Okay, or what we think the fifth wave is. Let's get rid of that because that doesn't matter. Okay. At least actually I'll keep it on there. So just ignore the 61.8 for right now. But one guideline is equality, okay, between waves 1 and 5. Okay. Now equality can happen multiple ways. So this is just one thing we're going to look at, all right? So it could be equality in price. Now this is in log, okay? So equality in log is nearly met. Okay, we're not looking for exactitudes here. It's nearly there. And linear, as you can see, it's not even close. But this isn't a linear market. This is an exponential market. Okay, which is why linear log is probably the best look at something this big. Now, when we get smaller, okay, then linear will probably be your better look. An alternate guideline here is that waves 1 through 3, your fifth would be 61.8% of that. Now you see in log, that's way up there, okay? But if we go to linear, very interestingly enough, okay, is pretty dang close to 61.8, okay? So, like I said, you got to look at both of these. Like equality in log is pretty close, and the 61.8 of 1 through 3 is pretty dang close. We just peaked right above it there. All right. So that's an alter. Those are two different guidelines you can look at for an impulse. Okay. Peek back over to log here for a moment. There we go. So that's that as a whole. We have multiple things going for us with the alternation within the extension, and pretty close to two different scales, okay, of equality between 1 and 5. Another thing you can look at is percentage. Okay, equality can happen in multiple forms. It does not have to be just in price. Okay, it could be in percentage of movement. So if you measure that, we're just going to look at all of them and compare, right? So that's about a 82% climb there. All right. And this one's going to be about 76%. Okay. So showing pretty much what log's showing. Okay. As far as the equality and price we were looking at, but the percentage is roughly equal ratio of that. What really matters is the rules and the count. Okay. These are all guidelines I'm showing you right now, which guidelines happen most of the time. Pretty close, right? Rules happen every time. Okay. Now let's zoom in, okay, to this final wave, and we'll take a peek at what that looks like. All right, now this is zoomed into the daily chart now, and we're taking a peek at what just this final fifth wave subdivides like. Okay, so we have the first guideline I'm going to look at, okay, is alternation. So you see the second wave, we have a flat pattern. And in the fourth wave, okay, the same color here, yellow, this is intermediate degree now. Then we have a zigzag. Okay, so we have alternation between 2 and 4 in the bigger count this time. Okay, and then I bring that up. That's an interesting observation because it's exactly opposite of what the larger count is. Right? If you rewind a little bit, I talked about how the extension of the larger count bore alternation. Well, now here in the final fifth wave, we have the parent count is bearing alternation, and the child count, which is the extension, does not. Which I bring that up because it is also a form of alternation. So the count that is bigger than this, the parent count does not alternate, but the child count does. And then as we go into the final impulse, it's exactly opposite. It's alternating, which is alternating, which is a crazy observation to me. That's insane. That's just the guideline of alternation at work. You have alternation within alternation, which is gorgeous, to be honest with you. I love it. Okay. And we're going to zoom into this one too, and I'll show you that. But that's absolutely beautiful. Okay. Now let's take a look at a couple things. Let's look at our other guidelines, just like we did on the larger count. Okay. So first thing we're going to look at is equality. And this is I'm still in log, right? Yep. Still in log. We can get rid of this. That's just noise right now. Measure the first wave. Okay, and we're going to move up. And, well, we are pretty close to equality there in log. Okay, let's check it in linear. Not really giving us any good information there, right? So let's go back to log. And now let's measure the 61.8% of 1 and 3. Honestly, it's also pretty close to that, if I'm if I'm being honest, okay? And let's check linear. Yeah, pretty dang close in linear too. To the next guideline to say this is two different guidelines I'm looking at for the same thing. We're comparing the first wave to the fifth wave of this yellow count. Okay. So, I mean, we are in like a cluster. Okay. And if you were then to draw a bunch of lines, right? So this is a way you can work out, you can make a guideline cluster, right? So you can drop a line there. Okay. And then if I go back to log, right? You can drop a line there. Okay. Let's make them, oops, move this over a bit. I'm close. I'm not to the dollar. That doesn't actually matter. But now let's bring this back to, now we're looking at the 1-to-1. Okay. Let's drop another line right there. Okay. And we're going to go to linear and we're looking at 1-to-1. And that one's kind of out of the ballpark there, but that's okay. Now, what I've done there is I've made a guideline cluster. I've now made a range of where you would expect the top to be, right? And then once you have your range, you can delete all your little lines here. This is just a little trick, a little technique of making a guideline cluster of where your final fifth wave should end. And now you have a range, a box, a cluster of guidelines of where your peak should form of an impulse, right? And as you can tell, if this is the peak, which I think it is because we have a satisfactory count, then we have peaked within the cluster of guidelines. Pretty fancy how that works, huh? So we'll get rid of that for now. Okay, and then we can see this is a satisfactory count. We actually have 2 extensions, right? Which is the max, okay? That's another rule. Now we're talking about rules, right? So you have your first and second wave. Your third wave is extended. You see it subdivides, and there's an extension within the third. Here's your fifth wave, extended fifth wave. So you have the maximum number of extensions now. You can extend this no further. That's it. It's a rule. You're only allowed to have 2 extensions within an impulse. And as you can plainly see, we have 2. Okay. Now let's dig in to this final fifth. We're going to smaller and smaller and smaller, smaller. Okay. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, back to zoomed in now. So we're on a 4-hour chart. I'm zoomed into this final fifth wave. Okay. And we're going to go through the same thing, and you're going to notice something really cool. Okay. So we have, again, your very standard 5 waves. Okay. I'm talking about this one here. Look at the blue count, 5 waves. Okay. With a third wave extension, very typical third wave extension. And you have alternation now. Okay. In everything, and now in both. So now a third form of alternation nesting down. So you remember the biggest count, we only had alternation within the extension within the child count, and the count that is 1 degree larger than this final fifth. So this yellow count, if you want to rewind back to review it again, we had alternation in the parent count between 2 and 4. Remember, this 4 was a zigzag, and the 2 that goes along with this was a flat. Okay. Now this 5-wave move has alternation within both the parent and the extension. So all the way up, 3 different forms of alternation, nested all the way in each child. Okay. Let's talk about what these are, because this one looks a little bit funny, right? And we're going to review what the rules are for this. And this is a perfect impulse here, this blue 3, okay, to review the rules of an impulse. But before we get, I'll dig into this in a moment, but here's the alternation I'm talking about. So the second wave is a zigzag. The fourth wave is a triangle. Okay, a running triangle specifically where the B wave makes a new high. That's alternation. Okay, within now the extension, which is the third wave here. And where I'm going to talk about more guidelines too with this one, because I know you're already looking at this little baby 5, right? We're going to talk about that. Okay, so here's a third wave. So you have a flat pattern for 2 and a zigzag for 4. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. What, the 4 can't go in a price territory of wave 1? It doesn't. It's a rule, right? 4 can't go into 1. That's the end of wave 1. 4 does not go into it. It's legal. It says nothing about the 4 going into the second wave. It says 4 can't go into the price territory of the first wave, which ends here. So that part's legal. Okay. Another rule of an impulse is that the third wave cannot be the shortest wave. Let's measure it out. Okay. NIM in linear. You want to do all your measurements in linear. See, my log is not checked. Okay. So let's measure. All you really care about is if the fifth wave is shorter than the third wave, right? And as you can tell, ignore the 61A. We don't care about that part right now. We just want the 1-to-1 extension. This, I've measured 100% the length of the third wave here, 2 to 3. And I want to make sure that 100% of the fifth wave does not exceed that. And it clearly does not. So the third wave is not the shortest wave. Fifth is smaller. So you have 5 waves. You have alternation between 2 and 4. I know it looks kind of funny, but it's legal. It meets all the rules of an impulse. The third wave is not the shortest wave. It's glorious. Okay. We can look at our guidelines here. So our first wave, our fourth wave. Okay, so this would be 1-to-1. Not even close to that guideline. Okay, that you can't even say it's close. If it came up here, yeah, you can say it's close, but it's not. Okay, so that's a guideline that it did not meet. Again, emphasis on guideline. All right. And obviously, if you check this, that's going to be even higher. Okay. So you don't meet that guideline. However, let's check another guideline. This one I haven't really brought up much yet. Okay. But this is a guideline. And if you feel free to go back and measure any of these impulses. So another guideline of an impulse. Okay. You want your impulse to meet some sort of guideline. Okay. And a little bit off here. There we go. You measure when it's complete. You do this when it's complete. Okay. You go from 2 to 4 and you drag up to the third. Okay. This is a channeling guideline. And what the guideline is that the fifth wave should be contained within the channel. It said nothing about that it has to touch the top. Okay. It can overthrow if it needs to, as long as it returns to the channel immediately, essentially. Okay. It has to do it quickly. But otherwise, the guideline is just that it's contained. Okay. You're not blasting off into outer space, okay, and then calling it a 5. It has to be contained within the channel with an allowable overthrow that returns. Okay. Didn't even have to worry about that in this one. It doesn't even come close to the top of the channel. Okay, so it at least met one guideline. All right. But again, a form of alternation is that all these other impulses have met either the 61.8 or the equality guideline. This one did not. But it is a legal impulse. It follows the rules. And that's the really important part. The guidelines just help you with probability, okay? Now, let's look at this one. I'll measure it for the sake of conversation. However, you can clearly see, and that's the end of 4, that this one doesn't meet it either, right? Here's your quality. I don't even have to measure I can do the 61.8. You can clearly see it's going to be higher, okay? We have another guideline for triangles, is what you have to keep in mind, okay? So anytime you get a triangle, the equality and the 61.8 of 3 or 1 through 3 are out the window. In fact, you should not expect to meet that guideline. Because what happens after a triangle is one of two things. You either get what's called a thrust, a post-triangle thrust, or an egregiously long extension. Okay, so my point being is that you should not, anything after a triangle, whether it's just a thrust like this one was, or an egregiously long extension, either way, you should not be expecting equality with 1 or 61.8% of 1 through 3. The triangle changes your guideline to be not those things, right? In this case, as you can plainly see, because we have the benefit of hindsight, that we got a thrust, what's called a thrust. It just barely makes a new high, and then that's it. It's all done. Okay, post-triangle thrust. Go ahead and look it up in a book. It's there. Okay, and I will fictitiously draw the alternate expectation following a triangle. Okay, it would be an egregiously long extension. Okay, something like that would be either this baby one or a really big one. Either way, you should not be expecting equality. Okay. Now with the benefit of the hindsight, as you can see, it was just what's called the thrust. So now this is confirmed, over with. It's complete. This impulse is now confirmed complete. Well, if this is complete, and that's a 5th wave, that means this is complete. And if that's a 5th wave, that means all of this orange one is complete. And if that's a 5th wave, as you can see where I'm going with this. Okay. And we have now completely retraced all of this triangle. Okay. Completely retraced it. And once you get to here, this is a line you can draw in the sand, right? Because if you're going to make the argument that, no, man, we're in a 4th wave. Well, once you get here, it can't be, right? Because you break a rule. Okay. And then your next line in the sand is down here. And you say, well, hey, man, this is just a 1. Right? This is just a 1st wave. And then we're going to go to the moon. Well, here's your next line in the sand, because what's a rule of an impulse? The 2nd wave cannot retrace 100% of 1, right? And then you can say, well, all of this is a 1st wave, right? Well, then you have your next line in the sand, okay? Which is right here, which is the same rule. Point being is, how long are you going to wait to protect yourself before you finally say, yep, it was over? because you can't confirm that until here. Which, that's a hell of a drop from the high. I'll even say from here, from right now when we're watching this video, as we speak, you're like, well, I'm not ready to cash in yet. I want to wait for a 40% drop before I decide that this is over. This is what the analysis is for. Okay, let's zoom in one more time to take a peek. Okay, because now we're out of hindsight and we're into foresight, which is the hardest part of Elliott Wave. Okay, now I've zoomed in. This is now the beginning of something, right? And we're on the 15-minute time frame. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this down in. This is as small as I will ever go for stocks, by the way. This is the smallest I will ever count on. We can start from the top and see where we end up so far. So we can go whoops, I don't know how that happened. I'll adjust the degree here in a moment. Come on, give me the right tool. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. Okay, and this is where it gets funky, but this is why I'm an expert Elliottician and I can pick these things out. Okay, so very first thing I ever look at when I'm looking to count something is, okay, this was some sort of zigzag, right? Then I want the fourth wave to alternate with it, which generally gives me two patterns, either a flat or a triangle. In this case, I'm going to go triangle. Okay. So I'll put the 4 there, the 5 there. Okay. You're like, whoa, how do you get a triangle out of that? I invite you to look up the rules of a triangle. A, B, C, D, E. Let's zoom that in here. First of all, let me fix this degree. Okay, and I'm going to make this, I'm going to go 2 down on that. Okay, which means this is one smaller than that. Okay, so we fixed the degree there. Come on, buddy. All right, and there's your triangle here. All right, and usually in the shorthand, if you wanted to, not label it, but show that it's a triangle, then you just make these little trend lines like this as the shorthand to show that it's contracting. Right? There's other versions of triangles as well. You could actually call this one of two things. You can call this a contracting triangle, or you can call this a barrier triangle. Generally, it honestly doesn't matter. They're just different types of triangles as long as they follow the rules. Okay, a barrier triangle is just when B and D are roughly the same level, right? It can go a little bit past it, right? It can be like, say, D came down to here, right, and it came past the B. That's fine too. Okay, that would be a barrier triangle is what it's called. Since D didn't go past B, too easy, contracting triangle. Okay. But even in a barrier triangle, can you say, oh man, well, D can go past B, what's the point? Well, because the rules of a barrier triangle is that A, C, and E all must contract. So to shorthand the rules of a triangle, a contracting triangle, is that A, C, and E all have to contract. Okay. D can't be egregious. Okay. You can't say that D came all the way down here and that's a triangle. No. What the rules say is roughly the same level, B and D. Okay. There's a little bit of subjectivity to that, right? Say, I'll put the little lines on there. Say D came to there, right? There's some subjectivity in that. You can say, okay, yeah, that can be a triangle, right? You'd probably need a little more price action to be sure, but you can say that that's roughly the same price level. If you came down here, no, that's not roughly the same price level at all. Right? Doesn't matter in this case because it contracted. So anyway, there we have that. regardless, now you have an impulse, right? So you have alternation between 2 and 4. And what do we have? What happens after a triangle? Either a little baby thrust or you get an extension that is egregiously long. And what egregiously long means is compared to the first wave, right? Because what are we looking for in guideline? Equality, right? Equality of the first wave. So if that's the end of 4 there at the E wave, we blew right past equality, which is what you should expect post triangle. It either should be really short and baby, which in that case, this is how you know if you identify the triangle. First of all, you're like, oh, am I going to get the thrust or am I going to get the big long extension? Well, equality would be a thrust. So you should not expect a thrust after this triangle. You should expect the extension, and that's what we got. Okay. And we're pretty much all out of hindsight at this point. Okay. And then this turns into a bigger one. 2, and then we're off into the 3 and the 4 and the 5. Okay. Let's change the degree on this. Actually, I want to make that white. There we go. Because I like different colors, that's all. Right. So now if we have a 1 and a 2, this is where we've run out of hindsight now. Okay. Now you have speculation. Now you're in speculation territory. Okay. Is this, I'm going to use this here, this polygon tool. Is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? For another 1, 2? Or is this just gappy in here and we can't see it, right? We're getting to really small time frames now, okay? So you have to keep that in mind, that potentially something has occurred in here overnight. You see the gap, right? You see the gap. Did something occur here overnight, right? That is the fourth wave to this 2, right? You have to keep that open to interpretation when you get into these really small time frames. Okay, so that is one option though, by the way. Okay, another option. Okay, now that we're in the speculative territory of this very small count, is that that's already done with, right? 1, 2, and now you're into 3. And this is going to start accelerating. You'll know, right? Because if we zoom out on that, what are we doing here, right? Let's go even to the 4 hour we're talking about. Look, see? Just even that little bit where we start invalidating things that we were talking about. And that's would be just a third wave. And then you're looking for a fourth wave, maybe a little flat like that. Okay. And then you're looking for a fifth wave to create a bigger one. Remember equality between 1 and 5, right? Or 61.8% of 1 and 3. We have to get there first. But that's how you start breaking those rules. This, for reasons I'm not going to get into in this chat, because I only share it with my members on wavecounts.com. Okay. That this pivot especially was very important from a time perspective. And that is now broken. If you want to know more about the time analysis with this, and this is the first time, by the way, very first time in this entire bull run that this important of a time pivot has broken, which is very, very bearish. I go into details on all of the time analysis for members only at wavecounts.com. It is a mentorship service. Okay. You can talk to me anytime you want. You can talk to the others in the group anytime you want. I do one-on-ones of mentorship on how to apply all of the rules and guidelines of Elliott. and that's all freely available, minimum a year. I no longer entertain any memberships less than a year. Because it's not fair to you, because this takes a long time to learn, to do anything less than a year, because you honestly aren't going to know if you like this if you spend any less time than a year. And it's not fair to my time either, that I spend so much time on you for you to just leave after a month. Okay, so that's my minimum is 1 year memberships at wavecounts.com. That's all I got to say today, folks. We are now in the declining phase of, at minimum, the declining phase of a multi-year cycle. High possibility we're in the declining phase of a 100-year cycle. But we're going to continue to analyze as price continues to move. Okay? That's all I got to say today. You guys have a great one. I'm out.